All right, everybody, we are ready for another CIRF report. This one for the 9th through the 15th of February 2023. And as you know, we've just departed the energy of Leo and its full moon. And so a lot of yang, a lot of output. Now it's kind of time for a bit of contraction. So it's kind of a time to exhale. And then metaphorically, what happens to your lungs when you exhale? Oh, a little bit low. Okay. All right. Let's go look at our summary slide. Now, we're going to do two of these triangulations. The first one is to show you the influence, because it's important to know not only what yourself is going to feel, but what others are going to feel. Now, you can't predict how they're going to react from that feeling. But then in the second half of this video, we're going to go over the solution. We're going to triangulate for the best action, the best course of action, the best things to focus on in terms of succeeding this week, given this energy. So what energy are we looking at? Well, I mentioned already contraction. And why is that? Well, there's a lot here. So in the tropical astrology, that's the biggest circle here. Basically, we have three main conjunctions. We have Mercury and Pluto. So we'll talk about what that means. And by the way, Mercury, which is indicated over here, is in or going into Aquarius, so an exalted state. And then we also have Sun and Saturn. This is going to be our main energy source, because you hopefully by the time I get done with this first half, you will be satisfied that we have chosen the biggest conjunction, and Sun and Saturn have quite a bit of intensity behind it, and I'll show you why. And then we also have Venus and Neptune. Well, Venus and Neptune give us a kind of a grandiose, with Venus being exalted in Pisces. She is all about worth. Well, not all about, but in this context, she's about net worth. Well, when we go over to the Dreambot, we have the same thing. We have net worth, and we also have explore and curiosity. I'm going to go through that in detail, including what kind of astrological influences are there. And then the I-Ching says hexagram 41, and it's just plain and simple, decrease. And that's all about the sun. Sun is in detriment. The sun in Saturn. Saturn is all about contraction and less challenge, hardship. So the sun with ego, having to experience less, it's total I-Ching 41, or decrease. And then on top of that, we have another alignment with the Sun and Saturn that is more along the lines of a parallel, which means whatever they're experiencing together is intensified immensely. And so not just decrease, but it's like mega decrease. All right. So do we have a good start yet, or? All right, let's go ahead and get started. It's always good to identify what kind of energies I'm facing as I'm recording. And I just happened to be recording this a little bit early, February 5th at about 7:20 p.m. As you note, there's a pretty much a dominant Leo moon that is rising on my horizon. So, and I saw her moon rising as I came home tonight. I am recording this a little bit early, so that's going to affect us when we talk about the Dreambot, but I thought I'd show you the live chart just so you can see what influences are at play as I record this. Now, there was no best comment award because I guess we're kind of lackadaisical, or I'm not judgmental, but not anybody met the criteria for winning the best comment. But I do need to shout out to the new folks, including Max Lorenz and ACDN Mystic. Those are on YouTube, and then Buy a Lake on Rumble. Welcome, everybody. And I know there's a lot more folks, and I want to welcome all of you, no matter if you make a comment or not, but it does help the algorithm if you just sort of check in and let us know you're here. And then the other announcement is that there is more content coming. We have one more episode. You hopefully saw the episode 2 of the future casting, then episode 3. And this is kind of going to conclude us going into detail on one specific alignment. What we're going to do is shift into what's called lunations. And that's an actual word for moon astrology, lunar astrology, from one lunar phase to the next time of that same lunar phase is about 30 days, plus or minus a day, 29 days, 29 and a half days to be more precise. But we call those lunations. And so we're going to be doing like a March 2023. And that way we can cover all the moon phases for you without it confusing. Hey, there's a new moon. But yet we're getting ready for an eclipse, for an example. Whatever. We're not getting ready for an eclipse until April this year, 2023. But it was just an example. All right. With that, let's go ahead and get started on what? Wrong slide. Sheesh. Here's the DreamBot. All right. And I have some glyphs on the DreamBot even, because this highlights 2 of our conjunctions today. Actually not conjunctions, 2 of our exaltations. We have 2 planets this week going into exaltation. Pisces already has Venus. Venus is in exaltation in Pisces. And that's already happening right now. Venus is in some context about worth and value, and it just so happens the red arrows are all about high net worth. High meaning powerful. Venus is powerful, so part of her archetype is looking for high value, high net worth, and it can be monetary or not and all sorts of things. Ironically, the only other exaltation is happening this week with Mercury, and that's this yellow glyph here. Yellow is Mercury, and Mercury is going into Aquarius this week. So Mercury in Aquarius is exalted, and exaltation means strengthened, means strong, means that they're unusually strong. So now Mercury is not all about exploration and curiosity. There's another archetype in the zodiac just as strong as an explorer. But when we're talking about Mercury in Aquarius, it's that urge to know. And you can't have that urge to know that strong without being curious. So it just makes sense that our DreamBot, even though it's about 3 days early, normally I'm doing this on the day of, and normally my day of recording is Wednesday. I'm recording this a little bit early. And even so, the DreamBot, the collective unconscious, is definitely seeing the 2 planets that are exalted. And I find that astounding, amazing. I was thinking that the DreamBot would be a little bit behind things. I was being prepared to go, hey, the DreamBot's a little bit off because we're recording this a little bit early. Because keep in mind, I don't do the DreamBot until that day. All right, so I want to know exactly what the collective unconscious is paying attention to at any moment. All right, let's get into the astrology. Just a reminder, all month we have planets, all the planets going direct, and here is a indication of Mercury going into Aquarius, meaning that he is exalted or strong, strengthened. We are in between moon phases. We just got done with the Leo full moon, and we're headed into the Pisces is the next, the Pisces new moon. But most importantly on this chart, what I want to show you is all these red horizontal blocks that span our two vertical, our week. This is our week in between the two vertical black lines. The only three red lines that span that are conjunctions. So one of them is Mercury and Pluto. The next one is Sun and Saturn. And the next one is Venus and Neptune. So Venus and Neptune get an extra intensity. This is parallel, meaning that on the celestial equator, both Venus and Neptune are exactly at the same distance from the celestial equator. And that means that they're extra intense, and they just happen to be in conjunction. So that conjunction is extra intense. So this dreaming or fantasizing about worth or value is indicated here, but towards the end of our week, that's on the 15th, it goes exact. The same thing happens with Saturn and Sun. So that happens on the 13th. That's actually before Venus and Neptune come together perfects. Okay, so Sun and Saturn means that ego is already weakened in Aquarius and now has to go and face Saturn. Well, Saturn is planet of limitation and challenge and, contraction, lessening or challenge. And so we have, even though Sun and Saturn don't go exact conjunction until the 16th, the 13th is where the parallel happens. So, and that parallel means they're at the same distance from the celestial equator. And so it brings an extra intensity. So on the 13th, I'll show you the distance when we get there. They're not exactly conjunct, but they're technically in a conjunction, and it's extra intense. And so that becomes our primary energy for the week. All right, hopefully this, if this is confusing already, this will hopefully clear it up for you. We're going to delineate from Thursday the 9th through the 15th, day by day, and hopefully this will all make sense. All right, so we have Venus and Neptune. You can see it visually here. They're both in Pisces, and they're within 8 degrees, i.e. a conjunction, and those energies are going to collide. We have a net worth, or we have a value. We also have beauty and harmony, but Venus is exalted in Pisces, so she's extra strong. She's finishing up her passion down to Mars. So this tension here was kind of creating a distraction. Well, that's waning off. And so Venus finally just gets to be big and bold and strong. And Venus strong is talking things about money, worth, beauty, harmony, how to relate to others, tight relationships, love, how to look your best, art and creativity. All those things are part of the archetype of Venus. And so she's in this dreamy state as she gets closer to Neptune. And it's not good or bad. It can be bad because it can give you a sense of like a false reality or unrealistic expectations, maybe escapism, but at the same time, it can give you good things. So it's not a good or bad thing. It depends. It's an energy when they come together, and it's a matter of using that energy to its best. And we'll be talking about that. So hang on here. The next conjunction is Mercury and Pluto, and this one is more of like can be seen in extremes. It is an extreme sort of energies. So you've got Mercury with mind and communication and travel, and that is meeting with Pluto, or the subconscious power. We also have meltdown and breakthrough, breakdown, breakthrough. We have death and rebirth. We also have that. The good side is this power. So you can see if you're not buying into a lot of fear, and that can be hard to do with Mercury and Capricorn. If you can stay out of fear, you can gain this sense of extraordinary subconscious power and bring that all to your conscious awareness through this alignment. That's Mercury and Pluto together. Then I'm going to argue that the biggest alignment of the week is Sun and Saturn in Aquarius. Now, Sun is weakened, right? So your ego is, maybe a little bit humbled. You might now with Saturn, you might see your weakened ego facing challenge, or facing lack, or facing some sort of hardship. Now, all that makes sense, right? But there's more. So we have Sun and Saturn in a parallel. This happens all week, but it's strongest on the day before Valentine's Day, or February 13th. That's when the parallel is the distance from the celestial equator, and they're both at the same vertical position, right? And so that makes extra intensity. And I already told you what the energy was, so everything there is intensified. And then just an update on Uranus, because that's going to come into the fore here in a few days, is Uranus just outside of our North Node now. So Uranus not quite as affected by or affecting our future, our North Node, our karmic path. And so that can feel like a stabilizing effect, at least for what you intuitively know as your future. It's not going to be so up in the air. It's going to be a little bit more, because we're talking about North Node and in Taurus, it's going to be a little bit more foundation or set in stone-ish, grounded. All right, Friday the 10th. Not a lot of change. Probably the biggest change that I've said before, from what I've said before, is Mercury and Pluto. Now, Mercury is past Pluto, so we're on the downside. We're on the waning side of this conjunction, still well within a conjunction, still strong. And so I would expect for a lot of us to feel, if you've had that fearful death kind of a feeling, or falling off of a cliff, I think this is where you're probably going to start to feel, at least mentally, like, okay, all right, there's at least a parachute, or maybe it was just an illusion. I'm not dying. Things just seem to work themselves out. That's the sensation of Mercury once it gets past Pluto. And then on Saturday, it's a big air day, because we're looking at 5 air planets, or planets, 5 planets in air signs. One of them, this is the time that Mercury goes into Aquarius and gets exalted. That's at 5:22 a.m. on February 11th. And that's Central Standard Time. This is 00 Aquarius. That's where Mercury is, still technically in a conjunction with Pluto. 1 degree off, exactly 1 degree difference. So still within that conjunction. A little heightened with some emotion there, as you can see, with the square, and Moon in Libra joining and making things just a little harder for mine. But at the same time, it's just sort of a pressure with the emotions. So at the same time that Mercury goes into Aquarius means that mental aptitude, clarity, memory, and how you communicate gets a lot stronger for most of us. The only thing is there's this pressure to talk, I guess, with emotions. Emotions are pressuring your mind to talk and communicate. And so, yeah. All right. That's all I wanted to say there. And then on Sunday the 12th, we have just a little update on all of our alignments. You have Mercury past Pluto, so waning at 2.5 degrees. You have Sun and Saturn 3.5 degrees, so getting tighter. And we have 3 degrees with Venus and Neptune. Now, Venus and Neptune will go perfect before Sun and Saturn will, and but their parallel will happen later. All right, now this opposition, remember I talked about Uranus is technically outside of a conjunction with the North Node, still into detriment. So Uranus does not quite as strong as he normally is by shaking things up and making changes, but still nonetheless doesn't mean he can't do his job. And he's breaking the mold with the material world. Anyway, that is opposite the moon over the south node. So we have past oriented, obsessive, that's Scorpio. Good Lord. Okay, so we have Scorpio emotions, kind of obsessive in a way, but it's focused on the past. So those two things are in opposition to each other. So we're going to probably be forced to resolve those things. We have fixed, that's Scorpio, fixed obsessive emotions versus fixated on material change that needs to be sorted out. So one's kind of in the future, one's definitely in the past. They're both fixed. They're both kind of, it produces an inner conflict. So you're going to see that as well. And then Monday the 13th, day before Valentine's Day, this is just an overall very intense day. And not just because these are tightening, these two conjunctions are tightening, but this is not quite three, like 2.5 degrees away. This is Sun and Saturn, but this is the max of the parallel. This perfects. This is where Sun and Saturn are at the same distance from the celestial equator, and it makes it very intense. All right, and this is the climax of that parallel intensity. So that's probably the big reason for this very intense day. But we also have Venus and Neptune down here that are beginning their parallel. So this is just when it starts, and they're getting tighter. They're within 2.5. They're both about 2.5 degrees from each other in a conjunction. But both conjunctions are perfectly parallel, and so extra intense. Now, on top of that, we have the emotions that are in Scorpio and fixed emotions, obsessed, potentially maybe a feeling of vengeance-ish. Now, those are in pressure with the weakened ego and intense of limitation and contraction. So this is a marked contraction to ego, intensifies, but also high risk of externalizing with vengeance due to the moon in Scorpio. Now, it doesn't always have to be vengeance, but I see this a lot. When I see this in a natal chart, I want them to know that it is highly likely that you're wanting some sort of vengeance from some past deed. And it's just there. It's just sticky. It's a fixed energy. The Scorpio, moon in Scorpio, it's just there. And we can talk about how to, let it go. That's a very common one with my Scorpio and moon Scorpio clients. but very intense. And that's another word for the Scorpio archetype. It's just intensity. Everything here is just expanded out. It's back to intense at the same time of contraction. So that's going to be interesting. So ego feels even more contraction, even smaller, and yet everything else intensifies. The energy between these things intensifies. Very intense day. Then on Valentine's Day, this is, I think we look for Venus. Wherever Venus is kind of marks the ability to love or harmonize. And she is very close, within 1 degree of a conjunction with Neptune. And so, it's very dreamy. I call that dream love, maybe fantasizing, maybe escaping if things are very difficult for you, especially coming off of a very intense day the day before on Monday. High alert for romantic escapism. Okay. High alert for that one. And that's not a good place, because escapism will create problems for you. Don't escape. But at the same time, I didn't mean to give you only one side of that alignment. The good side is that dreams are possible. And so if you don't currently have love, it's there for the taking. And all you got to do is imagine it, allow it to be there, and follow it, follow your heart. All right, other things on Valentine's Day. We got ego still under severe contraction because weakened sun, weakened ego, conjunct with Saturn, and still parallel, although it is waning. All right, and our final day of our CIRF week, this is Wednesday the 15th. Then we have Sagittarius emotions. We got Moon and Sagittarius squared off to a was perfected alignment between Venus and Neptune. So the climax of the dreaminess. But now it's the pressure to, actually, it's a kind of an ironic or oxymoron, but the oxymoron is that it's producing a lot of pressure to fire up love, because you got Venus and emotions in a square. So it's this pressure to generate it. Ironically, Moon and Sagittarius, it wants love, but it will rather just be free, be detached. And so he might accidentally see kind of a self-sabotage thing, and not really wanting to, but kind of tearing apart relationships in order to feel more free. This is what I call the grass is greener alignment or syndrome, because it's the ironicism or the parallels, the strange parallels. It's generating more love, or can. This is a big pressure to, and it's fire, and fire can love. Right? So we generate a square here, but at the same time, that Sagittarius moon just kind of wants to clip and be free. Yeesh. So watch out for that one. And we have a bonus chart. All right. The bonus chart was created because if you remember, well, I didn't notify you of this, but do you see anything missing here on Valentine's Day? Yeah, there's no square. The square's dried up, but just for a day, because right afterwards we have a square. And so I decided this bonus chart, I'd go into my software and I wanted to click day to day, day to day. And I just kept on clicking to see when the squares ended. Well, they never did, because I didn't go far enough. When I reached May 16th, 2023, I saw that Jupiter is going into Taurus. That looks like a big day. We're going to talk about that. We also have a time change in there. Oh, I hate those time changes. But bottom line is, from February 15th, 2023 to May 16th, we have at least one square in the charts. And I don't know how much further we have to go until another day without any squares is. But we know this to be true. And we're going to talk about this whole chart, this monumental moment with Jupiter going into Taurus on May 16th for your planning. But when is the next non-square day? I don't know. It's sometime after May 16th. All right, let's get into the I-Ching. And we had one change line. Pretty balanced day. Throwing or tossing the coins out and getting our reading. Hexagram 41, decrease, learning to accept a temporary decrease. Likewise, the inner strength that comes from bearing a loss can be balanced by an increase in inner strength and insight. So you can get value from contraction or from loss. All right. Yeah, I know it's a hard sell, but you can. And I'll give you some examples when we get to the solution. When letting go of material desires leads to greater simplicity in daily life, good fortune comes calling. This is much more profound than I think we realize. This actually feeds into what we're going to talk about in the solution. But that's not normal because we're only talking about the influence here, or trying to. Line 2 says, in order to render true service to those who are lacking advantages, it is essential that you don't compromise your dignity. That's a Venus thing. To truly be good service to others, you must be sure to take care of yourself first. Again, a Venus in Pisces, that can be a hard thing to do, even though she is strengthened. It's about Pisces, so sacrificing more of self in order to take care of others or to get along with others. All right, that will do it for the influence. Let me go to that summary slide and get you just the influence part. All right, so as you know, and I have to go, all right, into this. All right, what we're going to do is just summarize the influence for you before we move into the solution. So I have a picture here of that balloon, and when a balloon gets shot, supposedly, as this one did, it deflates and it contracts. And that's kind of the metaphor for our week. Of the 3 planetary conjunctions this week, the most energetically challenging is Sun conjunct Saturn because the alignment is triple intense. We have the Sun in detriment, i.e. weakened in Aquarius. We have the Sun conjunct Saturn, so ego has to face challenges or contraction. And then we have Sun parallel Saturn. So it's a triple intense. And already weakened ego faces limits, challenges, and hardship, and otherwise feels contraction in all things that ego values or is attached to. Watch closely, as you'll see a lot of people escaping their own contracted perceptions. All right, so that'll do it for our influence. Now let's talk about the solution. Here it is. You put the change line in, you get hexagram 27, or nourishment. Nourishment refers to more than just a healthy diet of food. The hexagram represents caregiving as well. Pay heed to your thoughts and impulses, ignoring those that undermine a healthy and persevering attitude. The fact that temporary pleasure may precede discomfort does not influence a person of mature character. In the same way, a wise person is discriminating in word and action. Enrich your character, and you will nourish everyone around you in the best possible way. All right, and now I'm putting in, now why did I choose Monday, the 13th of February? This is because this is the climax of our intense parallel. Remember, the Sun and Saturn won't go perfect, will not be perfected in a conjunction until next CIRF week. So they're about 3 degrees away, but the parallel perfects right now. So it's super intense, even though they're not right over each other. All right. So that's the sun on this day is in hexagram 30 and in Capricorn. So let's look at 30. It's the clinging fire. By the way, this 30 is the rave mandala. I have 3 zodiacal rings here. And one is tropical, one is sidereal, true sidereal, and one is the rave mandala from Human Design. So we're using all these for our triangulation. And freedom recognized as an illusion and limitation accepted as fate. Boy, does that not sound exactly like Saturn and Sun? Now, line 1 says composure, balance in the face of disorder. Wow. The maximization of limitation in all cases. Let me read that one more time. The maximization of limitation in all cases is the up arrow, meaning that this is your best chance for success in the I-Ching of the Rave Mandala. It means that with composure, you are to, no matter the situation, just be stable through feelings. There's a downside here, and that is the ability to maintain composure, but at the expense of progress. Balanced through feelings, but unable to let go of them. And we already talked about that with Scorpio. Luckily, that was only one day. But the big thing is, the best you can do here, according to the rave, is the maximization of limitation in all cases. Eesh. All right, ready? Here's our summary slide. And let me get rid of this, the light. Okay, and then, all right, so we had the I-Ching, remember nourishment. We're going to talk about that. Nourish your body, mind, soul. We had the Rave Mandala. I just read it. It means limitation as accepted as a fate, and we are to keep our composure, balance in the face of disorder. And then we have Sidereal Capricorn, and Capricorn is ambitious and prudent, responsible. So how do we triangulate this? They seem kind of similar to the influence. Contraction. There's all sorts of contraction in here. All right, here we go. So as the collective egos get their poignant lessons of contraction and limitation, expect the discomfort levels to rise in most of us. This is a great week to focus on improving your life through simplifying it. This might be a great time to consider fasting states. And fasting doesn't just have to be nutritional. And that's exactly what the I-Ching said. So I'm just using their words. They didn't use the word fasting, but it doesn't have to be specifically nutritional, although it can be. Although it may seem contradictory to the I-Ching 27, fasting can actually be a wonderful nourishment for the body, mind, soul. We can also extend that to the way you think, cognitions, social groups, your habits, your behaviors, your choices, who you hang out with, etc. By fasting, quote unquote fasting, from the normal life rhythms, you can tap into the alternative nourishment through synergizing with the rave's maximization of limitation or suggestion. And this is to accentuate the positive nature of contraction in all its possible ways. I mean, after all, the Rave Mandala said maximization of limitation in all cases. All right, so maximization of limitation to accentuate the positive nature of contraction in all its possible ways. Let the Sidereal Capricorn solution keep you grounded, practical, minimal, but still striving, working, disciplined, oriented, and responsible. How about that? You can include some goals in there too. Even though it's a week of contraction, does not mean that you're not allowed to get stuff done. So go ahead. We got the Sidereal Capricorn to get stuff done, to be goal-oriented. I wouldn't take big swaths of big leaps forward. Just keep doing you're doing your thing, right? But it doesn't mean do nothing. Contraction is not a do nothing activity. It just means doing more with less if you're going to do anything. But it also means reducing what you expect to get done, right? And the mantra that I plan to use is, I easily tap into and benefit from the purity of the divine nothingness, and I receive essential nourishment there. Right? It almost sounds like a very spiritual week, does it not? Fasting can be that way, and almost sounds like Lent is give something up. I mean, it doesn't have to be like all food. It can be giving up sugar, giving up alcohol, or giving up something. But I'm not trying to make this a Lent week for everybody. It just means that try to do more with less, but also see the ironic nature of the less you do, or getting rid of certain things actually nourishes you. I.e., so like for food, I can say wholeheartedly, I get better energy when I don't eat. During the week, when I have all my clients and big, heavy client load, I want to have good energy, so I don't eat. And that's called a intermittent fasting. So I'll wait until my day is done, and then I'll eat, or my work day. So something along those lines, but you can do that for maybe social media. For example, this week would be a great week to just get rid of social media and see how that nourishes your body. And it doesn't have to be just spiritual things either, or material things. It can be in all walks of life. I would pay particular attention to the habits that take away from your benefit or your well-being. Maybe make you sick, or intoxicate you, or toxify you. By eliminating those, you don't put the toxins into your body. And so therefore, in that way, you are nourishing with the absence of that toxin. All right. Well, I can't think of much more, and I appreciate everybody's comments, all your shares, and inviting the people that you trust into this group. What a great tribe to be a part of. The National Dream Center. We're just getting started, and hopefully you will enjoy the more content that we put out. Ideally, we're putting out double than what we did before, and that's just getting started. Episode 3 of the future casting will be with the old technology, and then we will begin tapping into some new material as we record with our new equipment. Wonder why I have that there. Oh, there we go. I had my head cut off that whole time. All right, everybody. Well, thank you, and God bless. Godspeed, and we will see you again next week. Take care.